Wake up everyone, another Bazaar tape video just dropped. So today I want to cover Pufferfish Scimitar build here. It's ultimately one of the newer items that Vanessa got. It scales with crit and poison. So gonna kind of go through the build evolution here. When playing the Bazaar, you don't really think about a build that you want to get into right away. You kind of just let the game come to you. So we're gonna cover how the game came to me in this one. So starting off day one, we have a catfish, and the catfish plus the Yeti crab are, good scaling combo. The fishing rod will haste the catfish, which scales its poison, and then the Yeti crab will freeze, which will scale the poison again. The reason I was kind of looking at poison in this run is that the Yeti crab was a drop from the enchanted items, and it has a deadly enchant on it. So it makes my other poisoned items have 25% crit. And I knew at the beginning of the game that the scimitar scales with crit, so I was like, okay, maybe we can kind of lean a little bit towards the poison build. The next day, we add a life preserver, our seashell gets upgraded, and we get a shield skill. Not a whole lot crazy happening here, but we got a lot of defenses and we have scaling poison. So I was able to pick up a victory on this day where I didn't on the first day. So on day three, we were going to replace the fishing rod with the Zorsid. I felt as though they do the same thing, and if this is burning 3 times and this is burning once, the Zorsid is actually going to haste more often than the fishing rod. Um, the life preserver is great with the poison scaling here. We got a poison skill, which is incredible. It helps with the synergy of this build. We upgraded our Yeti crab and the seaweed. The coral was added as a fill, and we got the skill from the PvE encounter, which is panic, but it's really not doing much for me here. This build right here is just effectively trying to stack poison and added a little bit of burn. I do think from here that weather glass is an option, so you don't want to hard focus on one line. If we get a weather glass, we would absolutely move into it. Now here is a fun day. We get jellyfish to have a little bit more poison on the build. It's going to add crit because the Yeti crab's giving it crit. The dive weights was a good pickup. This is just generally a really good item. It's kind of fun here because it has a chance of hitting the catfish, which would scale it even more. But outside of that, just getting 5 haste on your items is generally pretty good. I took all the burn items out because once we got the jellyfish and the dive weights, I'm like, okay, well, pufferfish now becomes enabled because the dive weights next to the jellyfish stacks a ton of haste triggers. I don't need it here. Um, Now that I'm looking at this, I actually have mispositioned the jellyfish. Having a coral or a seashell next to it would be good because when an item next to it goes off, it hastes the jellyfish. We got this freeze skill here. It was an amazing pickup. We have haste to proc the freeze, and when we freeze, our Yeti crab buffs our two poison items here. So that was an excellent synergistic pickup. We also got this crit skill, and considering the Yeti crab is giving these crit, this is adding even more crit for the whole build. So it definitely enables that crit line. And we got a gold seaweed here, so felt pretty strong. And didn't end up winning that fight, unfortunately. But that's sometimes how the Bazaar goes. So this day, day 5, we ended up finding the Scimitar of the Deep, which is an awesome pickup here. Being next to the Zorsid allows this to get hasted, and it also has a line in it where when this is hasted, it scales your poison items. It increases it by 2, I believe. But what it also is doing is whenever I crit, this poison's 8. So having the Yeti crab give these poison items crit is just kind of synergizing everything really well, and it's scaling it up exponentially. The dive weights got upgraded, and then I took out the life preserver. It only being bronze didn't feel like it was going to do too much, just saving a sixth of your health. So I preferred having more items in that were actually going to, do something. So in this video, I wanted to add just a little bit of a recap to where we are in the build. So I felt like once the scimitar was in, this was a good time to reflect and pause and just kind of see what the build's doing. This build's centered around catfish right now because you can see it's doing 127 poison. So that on its own is, quite a lot. The jellyfish is doing 76 poison. Sorcit's hasting, it went off twice. The scimitar is doing 32 poison, 60 damage. The seaweed's healing 500. So kind of thing I like to do is reference like how powerful is the individual item? Like, is it carrying its weight, right? So like, effectively, if you had 10 slots and they all did 100 damage, you would do 1,000 damage to your opponent. And since they have just a little bit over that, we wouldn't necessarily kill them. But if you think about it in terms of the other way, where this is healing 500, this is healing almost half my health for a single item slot. So it just kind of shows the power of the early upgrade, especially for something that has flat healing. It's this isn't going to scale well into the late game, but it is excellent in the early game. So stopping and kind of looking at your board just helps you assess, like, okay, what are my next ins, and what are my next outs, right? So coral being only 315 healing, although it's relatively good right now, it'll start to fall off quick, especially if we don't upgrade it, right? So we'll look to take this out eventually, but um, this is just a good little time to evaluate, and we can see the poison is carrying its weight. All right, so next day, day 6, huge spike in power. We get gold pufferfish. It goes in for the coral and the catfish. I took the catfish out, although it was carrying. The pufferfish is now going to be the carry, and I was feeling as though having the additional shield and health was just better than the additional offense at the moment. The pufferfish is just going to get so many haste triggers because of the jellyfish and the dive weights, and the Zorcid's going to be scaling the pufferfish's poison with it being hasted, and then the Yeti crab is going to scale the pufferfish's poison as well. So we're just centering everything around the pufferfish right now. Um, we also got stunning strikes as a skill this day. What this is doing is when we crit, it's going to freeze, and since we have crit chance from the Yeti crab, it's active. Like, we're not just fishing for like a 5%er. Pufferfish has 25%, scimitar has 25%, and the jellyfish has 25%. So when that freezes, this is going to scale the poison, slows them down. It's just, a great skill. We also got Toxic Friendship from the PvE encounter. Surprisingly good. Whenever pufferfish goes off, effectively it just poisons 2 more. The jellyfish is going to trigger it, the crab, and the Zorcid. So just, a little bit extra poison to help push this build. When I look at the recap, you can see the pufferfish is doing 300 poison, which is, a ton. We had the catfish doing 127, but taking it out for the pufferfish, kind of shifts the focus over to the pufferfish. All right, so day 7, the changes here, we're bringing in holsters. It's going to allow for just a quicker startup time. This build's engine is effectively the dive weights and the jellyfish. When the dive weights goes off, it's just going to scale the pufferfish, or not scale, sorry, but it's going to charge the pufferfish, which is going to, make it cast a ton. So holsters, 1, hastes these small items to go off sooner, and then 2, it just provides 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 haste triggers. So the pufferfish is going to go off right away as well. And so just like getting the ball rolling and getting the speed going fast is important, because that means we have even more time for our poisons to crit, to freeze them, and then if they're frozen and they're stalled out, then the poison's ticking longer, right? So it's just really good in general in the Bazaar to be as quick as possible. To note, I did take out the Seashell and the Zorcid. I felt like at this point of the game, going against a Mac, that Seashell providing shield isn't as beneficial. He could have, a poison-centric build. Um, there are burn and, just flat damage builds from him, but I felt as though it just was going to get the Seashell needed to come out, as well as the Zorcid, just due to them being slower at this point in the game. Interestingly enough, I found this thick hide skill from one of the PvE encounters, and it's insanely strong. It's whenever you slow, you charge an item 1. I don't have any slows in on the board, but it's in the back of my mind. Like, if you can find slow, get it because everything will charge, which will be awesome. Um, I got improved poison as a skill as well, meaning when you crit, your poison items gain 1 poison. Just a nice little addition here. It's nothing crazy, but we're getting a lot of crits, so it'll scale our poison. And then I also got Hunker Down, this skill down here. It's not very good, it's very marginal. So then moving on to day 8, not as exciting, but we got an upgraded Scimitar. We upgraded our crab and we upgraded our jellyfish. We got an extra additional ammo on the dive weights. That was just from like a level up option, the gunpowder. And then we'll talk about it later, but I'm sitting here 1 XP away from being level 10. Now, I got really lucky where my opponent is level 8 and seems to is struggling a little bit. So not getting 10 here wasn't like insanely crucial, but you know, you're not always going to get an opponent that's under leveled. You might get an opponent that's over leveled. But here, I could have chosen the PvE encounter to get 4 XP, but I just wasn't sure if I was going to beat it. But again, I'm going to talk about that a little bit later. This fight I ended up winning though, just purely due to them being underleveled. Um, Now day 9, it's unfortunate I didn't get that extra XP as well. I was really looking for it. I didn't get any slow. Just the build is sort of feels like it's flatlining, but I did get Toxic Enchant on the Pufferfish, so that is, a drastic power spike. It was nice to see the poison option on the level 10 level up. But outside of that, the day was, relatively calm. So I wanted to show the recap. The Pufferfish did 1,200 poison at this point in the game. That's just due to all the haste triggers. You can see we're getting 16 haste, 13 haste, 5 haste, the poison scaling from the scimitar, the poison scaling from the crab, and it having the toxic enchant. So at this point of the mid game, I'm very, very powerful. Poison does tend to fall off in the late game, so you do want to just kind of push the gas pedal here and get all your wins early. All right, so looking at day 10, we got rid of the seaweed. It was finally time where we had more health than it was healing relatively. So we found this cosmic amulet, and what this does is it just hastes an item, but if you crit, it gives it multicast. So I just put it in like as more haste triggers. It's really filler. I was hoping to get something else, but sometimes you just need to make small upgrades. We did find a turbo enchant, so the holsters is hasting for twice as long. That's great for the startup, right? Like it just means that this dive weight jellyfish combo is getting hasted for an additional second. I also, again, wasn't able to find an additional XP. So looking back to my decision about the fight, it cost me 3 fights worth of being a level below where I could have been. Now, the PvE skills I got weren't super relevant. I got the Awakened District and I got the PvE from that. And I also noted that I've actually started this fight with additional shield due to me taking the rest event. All right, so won that fight and then move on to day 11. Was able to upgrade the pufferfish to diamond, and I was able to upgrade the dive weights to diamond. And I did find that additional XP. And this is 13 is a big level. You do always want to keep it in mind because it allows you to upgrade an item or get a gold skill. So that's the reason why my pufferfish is now diamond, is because I got to level 13. So, my opponent is also level 13, which, at this point in the game, a lot of people will have that additional level just due to the XP, but it's way better for me to be on parity here than to be 1 level below. So I ended up losing that fight against the pig, unfortunately, but we go to day 12. We were able to replace our catfish and the cosmic amulet with a piano. So the idea with the piano here is it turns the dive weights into a friend, it turns the scimitar into a friend, and when they're used, they're going to haste themselves for 2 seconds. So the dive weights is now proccing 7 haste triggers from the piano, 7 haste triggers from the jellyfish, and the scimitar is going to be hasting itself. So it's just enabling a ton more haste triggers for the build. Now, another decision I made was when I took the level 14 level up option, I took Diamond Skill, and it turned into 4 ammo, which is pretty weak. So I guess everything I was saying about the 7 is actually 11, but for a Diamond Skill, I felt a little bit sad that it was only 4 additional ammo. And like I previously stated, we want to be winning these fights, and I just lost the last fight, so I'm like, okay, I really need to win the next 2. And that didn't seem like it was going to get me over the edge. But let's take a look at the recap here. Did win the fight, and the pufferfish did 1500 poison. So you can see that it's just kind of getting out of hand, and the build is, it's working. It's getting a lot of haste in, buffing up the pufferfish. So day 13, again, really, really hoping for some, additional power. I really would have loved a holsters upgrade, scimitar upgrade, crab upgrade, or just like some big, strong skill. And what I got was a radiant upgrade on the scimitar. I just felt like, that was a potentially better route than the dive weights, even though the dive weights going off is probably more likely to win me the game. Um, I was holding out for potentially getting a slow for the thick hide. And I got 3 more ammo for the dive weights, just with the gunpowder. But that day for me, day 13, just didn't feel too strong. So I ended up losing that day 13 fight. Going into day 14, I actually was really excited here because I was able to find a diamond rowboat, um, and I was able to find a slow enchant on the dive weights. Me losing the fight put me to death's door, and I took the enchant, which gave me the slow option on the dive weights, and I was like really excited. This is going to be such a powerful, 14 slow triggers charging 14 times. So I have a video here of the fight, and I'll just let you guys watch this last one. So unfortunately, didn't get the win here. Poison doesn't scale nearly as hard as some of the other builds. So it's unfortunate to end it with 9 wins. However, I got the pig down up to like 3,000 poison on that last fight. I know it was kind of hard to see. Um, but I did like this build. It felt fun. I definitely had some opportunities in the earlier game to maybe get a little bit more ahead with XP, or, maybe push the envelope a little bit better, or get a win somewhere that I probably could have gotten a win early, which would have prevented me from needing to win late here. Um, having the thick hide, not being able to convert on a slow, like there's a lot to look back on in this build and say, well, what could have been better? Now, I wanted to, post this. I wanted to get this out there because I think Scimitar being a new item, it's fun to kind of look at what its potential is. And at the end of the day, getting 9 wins, it's, that's all right. So now with the next portion of this video, what I wanted to do was go through some key decisions each of my days. So not just showing the final board, but maybe a little bit of how I got there. So I start with day 1, and I don't have a lot going on with my board, so I took the enchanted item option, and I kind of presented with some really interesting choices here. So I have the fiery integrated HUD, which, screams Oni Mask. The Yeti crab here, which to me was like, okay, it's maybe more synergistic. I don't have a poison item just yet, um, but that could lead into the scimitar. And then I have a deadly bayonet, which I think is incredibly strong. I just don't have any weapon synergies. So I take the crab just because I was like, yeah, let's try it out. I think the Oni mask definitely was a viable option as well, especially already with a burn item. It's just the 10% crit didn't really feel like this was going to do too much, and I felt like the crab had more potential early. All right, day 2. Fun decision I have to make is, can I beat the eccentric ether rate? I don't know. I wasn't really sure. This is kind of a hard part of the bazaar. It's you know, a time for you to be able to like show your skill is, can I go for the etherite? Because to me, I want the ticket and I want the rigged skill. The rigged skill is really busted, especially with catfish. Really good synergy here. I just didn't think that I was going to be taking down the shield that the Aetheryte scales with, and that might have killed me. Um, Wish I could go back and test, but I took the safe route for the boar, just trying to fish for the ticket, which did not hit. Day 3, I'm looking here and I'm like, okay, well, Volpac is not the best merchant. You can get gold by selling your bronze items, but like he's not a synergistic vendor, meaning there's just all items, so I could completely whiff. Like I'm more likely to whiff going to this vendor. Whereas the crate, I can either take a medium item or just get a random skill. And I ended up going for the random skill, which turned into the poison skill, which was like just a really nice high roll. But I felt like taking the skill just has a better chance of increasing my board's strength for this given decision. All right, day 4. This is a fun decision too. It's can I beat Prince Mirianus? He has a ticket, coconut citrus, and a good skill. Whereas these other two don't really have a lot. I'm not too excited about the ammo skill from the Raider, but I was interested in the crit skill from the Dervish, and not knowing whether or not I could beat the Prince was tough. I've always been beat by him. I've never actually been successful with that. I think if the Life Preserver was silver, I would have gone for it. But I went with the Dervish just to get the crit skill, and I ended up getting the crit skill, which was really nice. All right, now here was a fun one. Midsworth, I didn't have many medium items I wanted to sell. I also don't really need the gold. I feel like being at 18 gold, I'm like, okay. The gumballs, I could add more crit to my build, but it's so minor at this point of the game. I just wasn't super excited about the gumballs. And at this point, I'm like, well, more poison items would benefit me. So I took the poison and ended up getting the scimitar from this poison node. Bit of a high roll, but I think, even upgrading catfish or this or the Yeti crab would have all been great, right? So I was just like, let's just take the guaranteed power. Now, day 6, I didn't get a good screenshot, but the option here is upgrading the scimitar or the pufferfish that's in my stash because I picked up a pufferfish on this day and then I got this node and I ended up upgrading the pufferfish just because I was like, okay, well, gold pufferfish is like way, way better than a silver one. And I wasn't even going to play the silver one, but then getting this option, I'm like, okay, let's shift into the gold pufferfish. And as we saw earlier, that did a really good job of carrying me for the next couple of fights. So this is an interesting node. The Barcoon, you can go to if you need to sell some of your small items, get some gold. You can see here I'm at 1 gold, and I have a couple of items in my stash. But the browse the merchants is, it's random, but there's a lot of good vendors I could hit. I could get the haste slow CD one. I could just get aquatics. I could get, non-weapons. Like there's a good amount of vendors, poison vendor, like that I could hit, shield and health vendor. But I felt broke, so I went with Barcoon and I sold a couple of the small items out of my inventory. All right, now day 8. I'm sitting on 34 gold and I'm presented with a tropical island. I took the tropical island and felt as though I was okay with getting the slow little drip of health and regen. Um, it's a tough call, and I'm curious whether you guys would take the tropical island or leave it in the shop. All right, now this is the pivotal decision that I kind of talked about earlier. Can I beat this Void Knight? Because if I beat this Void Knight, I can get to level 11 on day 9, effectively being over leveled. Now, I didn't think I could. He cleanses his poison when he reaches half health, and his weapons hit for a third of your health, and they freeze you. And I just kind of got a little shy, and I took the Oasis Guardian. He also has a nice little bit of drops that would have been good for me. So it it's tough, but like not knowing whether or not I could kill or take the risk to kill the Void Knight was kind of eating at me. But looking back on it, if I could even get a single XP or two, a single XP I'd be super sad. Zero I'd be down horrendous. But if I got 3 XP, I'd be super fine with it. The risk that is like not getting the loot from the Oasis Guardian. Um, so it's possible I should have clicked that. All right, day 10. The only real hard decision here was where do I put the haste, and I think that it being on the holsters was the best call. It just gets dive weights going off faster, and it gets all the small items going quicker. The only other argument really would have been the jellyfish or the catfish, or I guess the scimitar as well. But I feel like the holsters getting the start up here is really nice. So I just wanted to point this out as like, hey, this is pretty good synergy. All right, day 11. This is an interesting and like it's important to know this, but when you click the radiant enchant, you don't get an experience point. You can see that by this little node at the bottom that kind of look like your XP. So the get weapons will give you XP, the weapons will give you XP, but the radiant enchant won't. So it's tempting to take the radiant enchant. However, I want to make sure I get to level 13, so I need to take one of these two vendors instead, or I guess this is a vendor, this is you just get the item, but I have to take one of these. So I went for the get the weapons. I'm just trying to, get a scimitar upgrade, but mainly it's to make sure that I level up. All right, so skipping forward, so this wasn't the level 13 level up, this is the level 14 level up. This I think is also a pivotal moment of the run. Do you take a diamond enchant, a guaranteed diamond enchant, or do you go with the synergistic haste and charge? Now, it's a lot of hindsight, but when I took the diamond enchant, I got a pretty big dud. I just got the ammo. Whereas if I had taken the haste skill, I would have guaranteed synergy with my board, even if it was maybe a gold or silver. But I wanted to point this out because the diamond is so tempting because there's a lot of really high rolls that you can get from it, but you can whiff. And in this moment, I whiffed. However, I did take the diamond enchant because I know that poison isn't gonna just it needs help getting there in the end game, so I was really hoping for something stronger from the diamond vendor to get like a stronger build for the end game. But it's just a curious thing to take a look at. Day 13. Now these feel so boring for a day 13, right? But I feel like it's actually really important to do the right thing. JJ is going to give you the chance, like a low chance at upgrading holsters, scimitar, yeti, um, and the dig site here. I've got 44 gold. I can go fish for an item maybe from another hero. Now it takes a lot of knowledge of the Bazaar to know exactly what you could hit, but again, I took the JJ here, but likely the dig site trying to get a high roll would have been better because that was kind of the same approach I had with the diamond skill is, well, I really need help getting this last win. Um, is upgrading the holsters would be a big help, but getting that upgrade from JJ is not that likely. So you kind of can see more options from the dig side, but there's more out there. It's just a tough node, right? So curious what you guys would pick here as well. All right, and then the last decision I wanted to make was this. I'm going into the last fight. I didn't win day 13. I'm on death's door. I have to win. It's a win or lose moment. And I get presented with just some really like meh choices. Fight a monster, gain gold, and get a weapon or weapon vendor. Now, obviously I'm not gaining gold. That would just be worthless. So do I take the chance at upgrading the scimitar, or do I fight a monster and try to high roll some skill? And I chose the monster, and it ended up being like hulking experiment, super lame. But I did feel like, okay, maybe just on the off chance I get a crazy skill that helps me push through the finish line, that would have been better. All right, well, anyway, that wraps up this video of my pufferfish build. Um, Please let me know what you thought about it. If you made it all the way to the end, I really appreciate you. I want to create more of this content, and I want it to be beneficial. So any feedback to help make this better would be greatly appreciated. And I'll catch you in the next one. Thank you very much.